I poured the last drop of wine into Claire's glass, careful not to spill a drop. 2-3 years, I said, raising my own glass. 2-3 years, Claire echoed, her eyes sparkling in the candlelight. Daniel leaned back in his chair, elbow resting on the table, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. And many more, Ethan. You're doing well for yourself. I laughed. Thanks, Daniel. You're always good at making people feel awkward. You know that? Emily chuckled softly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I think he's sincere, she said, voice barely above the clink of silverware. Is he? I asked, lifting my glass toward her. A teasing challenge, depends, she murmured, eyes flicking toward Claire. On how observant you are? Claire shifted in her chair, fingers brushing against mine under the table. Ethan, stop teasing, she said, though her laugh sounded different tonight, brighter, almost rehearsed. I frowned slightly, but shook it off. Maybe I was imagining it. All right, enough small talk, I said, raising my eyebrows. Who wants more wine? Daniel's hand shot up before anyone else could answer. I'll take some. Make it a proper celebration, won't you? I poured carefully, noticing Claire's eyes, following Daniel's every move. She laughed at something he said, a joke I didn't hear. And her hand lingered a fraction too long on his arm as she wiped at her mouth with a napkin. Claire, you've got to stop looking at him like that, I said lightly, trying to sound casual. My stomach twisted, but I forced a smile. What do you mean? She asked, tilting her head, eyes innocent. You know that look? I said, though my voice betrayed nothing. She laughed again, a little too loudly this time. Ethan, you're imagining things. Emily didn't say anything, just smiled faintly, her gaze lowering to the tablecloth. I caught her glance once or twice, fleeting and quick, but there was something unreadable in her eyes, like she already knew what I did. Daniel leaned forward, resting his chin in his hand. You two are adorable, really. It's rare, these things. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Thanks, Daniel. And Daniel continued, tilting his head toward Claire. I can see why she's lucky to have you. But Ethan, he clapped a hand on my shoulder, a little too firmly. You're the lucky one. I froze, feeling a strange coldness wrap around my chest. Thanks, I said, forcing a laugh. Claire reached for my hand again, smiling, but it felt different now. It felt rehearsed. Ethan, you're impossible, she said, trying to lighten the mood. Am I? I asked, voice low. Maybe I'm just noticing things. Emily looked up at that, her eyes briefly meeting mine. A shadow crossed her face, almost imperceptible. Things? She asked quietly. I nodded, trying to mask the unease crawling under my skin. Just little things, I said. Small. Daniel laughed, waving his hand dismissively. Ethan, you worry too much. Enjoy the evening. Stop overthinking everything. I forced myself to relax, sipping my wine slowly. I watched Claire talk, watched her laugh at every word Daniel said, the way her eyes sparkled when he leaned toward her. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. You've got to tell me how you met Emily, Claire said suddenly, her voice sharp with curiosity. I don't think I know. Emily hesitated, her lips pressing together. We met at university. London, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was a subtle hesitation in the middle of the sentence that set my teeth on edge. I noticed it. Of course, I noticed it, but I kept my smile polite. Ah, university friends. That explains it. Daniel's gaze shifted between all of us, unreadable. Small world, isn't it? He said softly, almost as if he were saying something meant for Claire, alone. The room fell quiet for a moment. The only sound was the soft clinking of cutlery against plates. I tried to laugh, to force some warmth into the space. Well, this has been lovely, it has, Claire said, but her eyes lingered on Daniel for a beat too long. Emily sipped her wine, silent. Daniel finally leaned back, smirking. You're a lucky man, Ethan, he said again. And this time I felt it, a cold, twisting knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. I smiled, nodding. Yeah, lucky. Inside, though, everything felt different. Nothing would ever feel the same again. I poured the coffee slowly, steam curling into the air, trying to focus on the ritual, the smell, the warmth. My hand lingered over Claire's phone sitting on the counter. I hesitated, then picked it up, telling myself it was just to check a recipe. "Claire, where's the cinnamon?" I called, turning over the phone. "In the cupboard," she replied from the bedroom. "Why are you baking again?" "Just thinking," I said, swiping open her phone. The screen lit up with a message. My thumb froze before I could scroll further. Last night was worth every risk. DI blinked, twice, 3 times. My stomach flipped. My hand shook so violently, I almost dropped the cup. I set it down. No, this isn't." Claire appeared behind me, brushing past. "Everything okay?" Yeah, just the coffee's strong today." My voice cracked. I swallowed hard. "Really strong." She glanced at me, but didn't ask more. She didn't notice the way my chest tightened, the way my fingers itched to throw the phone across the room. I sank onto the stool, staring at the message like it might change if I looked hard enough. Daniel," I whispered to myself. I wanted to shake it off, to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe someone else. Maybe a joke. But the words burned. Worth every risk. Worth every risk. What risk? I forced myself to speak aloud, though my voice trembled. "Claire, do you know anyone with a D?" She tilted her head, smiling softly. "Do I know anyone with a D?" "Ethan, it's coffee, not a mystery novel." I tried to laugh, but it sounded hollow, echoing in the small kitchen. Right. Mystery novel." She walked past, humming, and I stared at the ceiling, gripping the edge of the counter. My mind replayed last night in slow motion. Her laughter, the way she leaned in toward Daniel, the ease of their conversation. I hadn't seen it then, or maybe I had, but I'd ignored it. Told myself I was imagining things. I waited until she left for a quick shower. Then I scrolled her messages, my heart hammering, hands sweating. I didn't read everything, just enough to confirm it. Daniel's name, the way she replied, casual, playful. My chest constricted. I whispered into the empty kitchen, "How? How could you?" Minutes passed. The coffee grew cold, forgotten. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't carry. My fingers fumbled the phone as if it were burning. Later, when Claire returned, I tried to hold her hand. "Hey, come sit," I said softly, wanting to anchor myself to feel something real. She hesitated, then gently pulled away. "I'm fine, Ethan. Really? Don't worry. Don't worry." I repeated, disbelief cracking my voice. "You're fine?" "After last night..." She frowned slightly. "What are you talking about?" I shook my head. Nothing. But inside, panic bubbled like acid. I could hear their laughter in my head, still crisp, bright, echoing. I pressed my palms to my face. "Ethan, talk to me," she said cautiously, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mind refused to form words that wouldn't betray the storm raging inside. I moved to the living room and sat on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Every memory from the dinner replayed like a film I'd never wanted to watch. Her laugh at Daniel's joke, the way she touched her hair when he leaned close, Emily's quiet, knowing glances. Everything suddenly made sense, and I hated myself for seeing it now. Daniel," I muttered again. My throat burned, but no sound came out. Hours passed. Claire went about her day unaware. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I didn't move from that spot. Every shadow, every creak of the flat, every small sound felt magnified, suffocating. I tried to sleep curling under the blanket in our bedroom, but it was impossible. I imagined them laughing together, hearing snippets of last night's conversation, as if it were a recording. I whispered into the darkness, Why would you risk everything?" No answer came. Only the ceiling stared back, blank, indifferent. I hugged my knees tighter, rocking slightly, the cold sweat of fear and disbelief coating my skin. Minutes turned to hours. My mind wouldn't stop replaying every smile, every touch, every laugh. The word risk throbbed in my skull. Last night had ended, but my sleepless vigil had begun. I stared at the ceiling, unable to close my eyes. Daniel's voice, Claire's laughter. Emily's knowing glance, A carousel of betrayal spinning endlessly in my mind, and I knew nothing would ever feel safe again. I walked into Daniel's office, heart hammering. The city buzzed outside the window, but inside, everything felt unreal. He looked up from his desk, smirking. "Ethan," he said, leaning back. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" I gritted my teeth. "Cut the act, Daniel. You know exactly why I'm here." He raised an eyebrow. "Do I?" I slammed my hand on the desk. "Don T. Play games. Last night, the message you crossed a line." Daniel laughed, slow and deliberate. "Mate, you're reading too much into things, mate." I repeated the word tasting poisonous. "That's your defense? That little word?" He shrugged, still smirking. "You worry too much. Claire is charming. You should take a step back, mate." I leaned forward, voice low, shaking. "You don't get to charm her. Not like that. Not behind my back," he sighed, standing and walking around the desk. "Ethan, relax. You're making a mountain out of a molehill." "I'm not," I said, voice rising. "You sent that message." Your eyes stopped, because the words sounded too small for the rage inside me. He shrugged again. "Yes." Leaning on the edge of the desk. "Look, I like Claire. She likes me. But you're too serious. You stopped seeing her, mate. Focused on work, on yourself. You think that makes it okay?" I shouted. Daniel's smirk widened. "No, but it explains it. You created a distance. She came closer to someone who noticed her. It happens, Ethan." I stepped back, chest heaving. The office spun. "I trusted you. Both of you. Everything I thought I knew, I was wrong." He shook his head, still calm. "I didn't lie. She made choices. You failed to notice." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I turned on my heel and left, rain starting to fall as soon as I stepped outside by the time I reached our flat. My shirt was soaked, hair plastered to my forehead. I pushed open the door, and Claire looked up from the sofa. Her eyes red. "Ethan," she began. "Don't," I said, voice tight, choking on my anger. "Just don't." She stood, trembling. I'm sorry. I never meant, I interrupted. "You sent that message. You betrayed everything." Tears streamed down her cheeks. I know, Ethan. But you stopped seeing me. You only saw your work. You stopped noticing me." I laughed bitterly. "You think that excuses this?" She shook her head. "No, I'm sorry. I love you, Ethan. But I made a choice. And I'm so sorry." Step back, silent. Words failed me. My chest tightened, lungs burning with grief and rage. You could have told me," I whispered, voice trembling. "Anything but this." "I tried," she said, voice breaking. I wanted to stop, but I felt invisible. "You weren't there." "Not really." And then she stopped, sobbing, unable to finish. I stared at her, feeling hollow. Every memory, every touch, every laugh from last night replayed in my head. Her warmth, her voice, the way I thought we were safe together, all of it shattered. I turned away. I can't do this," I said softly, but firmly. "Ethan, please no," I whispered. "Not now. Not ever, maybe." I walked to the door. Claire's voice followed me, small and broken. "Ethan, I love you." I didn't answer. I opened the door and stepped into the London rain. The droplets stung my face, sharper than I imagined, cutting through the numbness. The cold soaked through my clothes, but I welcomed it. The streets blurred, lights reflecting in puddles, people moving around me, oblivious. I didn't care. I didn't want care. My world had collapsed, and nothing felt familiar anymore. Every step I took away from the flat felt like a symbolic exile. I had left behind not just a home, but a life I thought I understood, a life that no longer existed. I walked in silence, letting the rain drown out everything else. Their laughter, their smiles. The lies, all of it faded under the relentless downpour for the first time in years. I felt completely alone, and maybe that was the only truth left. The flat was smaller than I remembered, almost empty. Just a bed, a chair, and the window overlooking the Thames. The river moved slowly, indifferent, and I stared at it for hours without realizing I hadn't eaten. "Ethan." Olivia's voice broke through the quiet one afternoon. She stood in the doorway, a bag of groceries in her hand. "You've barely touched anything." "I'm fine," I mumbled, turning my gaze to the floor. She stepped inside, setting the bag on the counter. "Fine," she repeated. "Is that what you call walking around like a ghost?" I shrugged, fingers brushing over the edge of the table. "Maybe I just need time." "Time's fine," she said softly, pulling out a loaf of bread. "But you can't let them take your peace too." Her words sank deeper than she knew. I looked up at her, eyes empty. "Peace feels like a luxury right now." She sat down across from me. "Ethan, I know it hurts. I know. But you can't live like this." I swallowed, nodding faintly. "I don't know how to stop thinking." "You'll figure it out," she said, voice firm but gentle. "You always do." Days blurred together. I skipped meals, skipped work, the Thames, a constant backdrop to my hollow routine. I watched the water, watched the clouds reflect, and felt nothing and everything at the same time. One afternoon, Olivia returned, knocking gently before entering. "Ethan, Dr. Hughes is here," she said. I stiffened. "Therapist." "Yes, you said you'd see him. Remember?" I ran a hand over my face. "I remember. I just wasn't ready." "He's calm, Ethan," she said, giving me a look I couldn't refuse. "You need someone who sees you, really sees you." The door opened, and Dr. Rowan Hughes stepped in. His presence was calm, measured. He smiled faintly, extending a hand. "Ethan." "I'm Rowan." I shook it silently. "Hello!" "Please," he said, motioning to the chair opposite him. "Sit wherever you feel comfortable." I sat on the edge of the bed, keeping my arms crossed. I don't really know why I'm here." "You're here because you're hurting," he said softly. "And because you don't have to carry it alone." "I don't even know where to start." "It's okay," he said, voice slow, deliberate. "You don't start anywhere. You just feel." I blinked. "Feel." "Yes. You don't heal by forgetting, Ethan. You heal by feeling." I laughed bitterly, low and broken. "Feeling hurts too much." "I know," he said. "It does, but it's the only way forward. You can't erase pain, but you can learn to sit with it, understand it." I looked at the floor, my chest tight. I can't stop seeing them. Claire, Daniel, everything. Their laughter. Her eyes. All of it. He nodded. "You don't have to stop seeing. You have to let it exist without it destroying you." I don't know how," I whispered. "Let it out," he said simply. "Cry if you need to. Say the words. Feel the weight. Don't run from it." I closed my eyes. The tears came slow at first, then faster. Hot tracks down my cheeks, shaking with the sobs I had been holding in for weeks. Olivia sat nearby, silent, offering presence, but not pity. For the first time, I cried without shame. Not for Claire. Not for Daniel. For myself. For the man I thought I knew, the life I thought I had, the trust that had been shattered. Dr. Hughes's voice was calm, steady. "This is the start, Ethan. The beginning of feeling. Not fixing, not forgetting, just being with yourself." I nodded, leaning forward, letting the river's distant murmur fill the space around me. For the first time in days, I felt something shift inside. I don't know if it gets easier, I admitted, voice shaking. "Maybe not right away," he said, "but it becomes manageable. Step by step. Moment by moment. That's how you heal." Olivia placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone," she whispered. I let her touch anchor me for a moment, tears still falling, but lighter now. The flat by the Thames felt less empty, less like a cage. And for the first time, I allowed myself to believe maybe, just maybe, I could survive this. The Thames looked the same that morning, gray and indifferent, but I felt different. Months had passed, yet the echo of last night, last year lingered. I was sitting in the flat, half-empty mug in hand when my phone buzzed. "Ethan, you there?" Tom's text. I typed back. "Yeah." A call came a minute later. "Ethan, it's Tom. Sit down." I slumped into the chair. "What is it?" He sighed. "Daniel's firm, it's under investigation. Fraud. Big one." I froze, fingers tight around the mug. "Fraud? Are you serious?" "Absolutely. Regulators are digging through everything. It's messy. I thought you should know first." I laughed, bitter and low. "Messy? That's one way to put it. Don't sound too thrilled, mate," he said, a half laugh in his voice. "I'm not thrilled," I said, voice tight. I'm curious. Justice feels small, though, almost empty." "Yeah, I get it," Tom replied. "Take care, Ethan." I hung up and stared at the ceiling. Months of quiet, months of watching her posts online, pictures of champagne, all smiles. The world saw perfection. I saw emptiness. I scrolled past her latest photo, fake laughter frozen behind a screen. My chest tightened, but I felt a flicker of satisfaction, small, bitter. Later that afternoon, I wandered through Covent Garden. The streets buzzed, lights reflecting off the wet cobbles, tourists taking photos. I ducked into a cafe, needing warmth, needing distraction. I spotted her immediately. Emily, thinner, paler, her eyes carrying a weight I recognized too well. She looked up and froze. "Ethan," she whispered, voice almost trembling. I approached slowly. "Emily, it's been a while." She nodded, hands wrapping around her coffee cup. "Too long." I sat opposite her. "How are you?" She gave a weak smile. I knew. I asked, heart thudding. "I saw the messages," she said quietly. Her voice broke. "All of them." I kept my expression neutral, but inside, everything twisted, and you stayed. "I stayed," she admitted, tears threatening, "because I thought he'd change. I believed in him." Her hand shook slightly. I reached out, but didn't touch her. You must have hurt too," nodded, swallowing hard. "Every day. Watching them, I hated myself for staying. But leaving felt impossible." "I understand more than I thought," I said softly. "I hated myself too, for trusting, for loving, for everything I didn't see." Her eyes met mine. "You're not the only one," she said, voice fragile. "I was blind too." We sat in silence for a while. Outside, tourists chattered. The cafe smelled of coffee and pastries. Normalcy pressing against the edges of our grief. "You look tired," I said finally. "Hollow." Emily laughed softly, a sound more sad than amused. "I feel hollow. But seeing you, it's strange. Comforting, in a way I didn't expect." I nodded, letting her words settle. "I feel that too. All this time, I thought I don't know that I was alone." "But I'm not, am I?" "No," she whispered, eyes glistening. "Not completely," I hesitated. "Emily, do you regret staying?" Her lip trembled. "Yes, every day. But I learned, I see things clearer now. I won't be fooled again." Let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Neither will I. I can't. But seeing you, hearing you say that, it doesn't hurt as much. Not entirely." "What?" Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the past seemed like a shadow rather than a chain. "Maybe," she said, "there's some small justice in all of this. Karma, whatever you want to call it. Daniel's trouble, Claire's emptiness online, maybe it's balancing things out." I smiled faintly. Poetic justice feels better when someone else sees it too. Emily reached for her cup again, but didn't look away. "I'm glad we ran into each other. Not that it fixes anything, but it matters somehow." "It does," I said, nodding. "It reminds me that life, even after betrayal, still has moments worth noticing." Her voice was soft. "We notice them now because we survived the worst." I let that sink in. The Thames, the rain, the empty flat, the long months of hollow days. It all felt lighter somehow, because someone else shared the weight. Someone who understood. For the first time in months, I felt the sting of betrayal paired with a strange sense of relief. Karma, Emily, the river outside my window, they were all reminders that life moved forward, slowly but inevitably. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in carrying the pieces anymore. My phone buzzed. just as I was sorting sketches for Sophie Trent's design studio. Daniel's name flashed. My thumb hovered. Curiosity? Malice? I wasn't sure which. Ethan, mate. His voice sounded tense when I answered. I need your help with something. An architectural project? Big one? Can we meet? I didn't flinch. Daniel, I said slowly, letting the words stretch. It's been a while. What kind of help are we talking about? Just a plan. Expansion, your expertise. I'm in a bit of trouble. I hummed, feigning hesitation. Trouble. That sounds serious. All right, I'll meet you. Where? London Bridge Cafe. Noon. Fine, I said. The word was cold. My mind was already calculating, turning his desperation into leverage, turning his arrogance against him. When I arrived, Daniel was already seated, looking smaller, somehow anxious. Ethan, thanks for coming. I don't know how I got into this mess. I smiled faintly, letting warmth slip into my tone, a mask. You always find a way, Daniel. Let's see what we can do. He spread documents across the table, charts, floor plans, projections. I need an expansion plan. A big one. Something that looks solid, appealing to investors. I nodded, scanning quickly. I can do that, but I'll need time. Accuracy matters, Daniel. You don't want this to collapse. His shoulders slumped. I trust you, Ethan. You're the only one who can fix this. I tapped my pen against the paper. I'll help. But we have to be careful. One misstep, and I let the words hang, letting him fill in the blanks with fear. He nodded, swallowing hard. Yes. Careful. As he spoke, I drew out suggestions, expansion routes, budget projections, structural changes. Everything looked impressive on paper. But every recommendation I made was calculated to strain his finances further, to deepen the cracks he hadn't seen. I smiled inwardly. Revenge doesn't need fire. It needs strategy. I'll get to work immediately, I said, standing. Expect updates in a week, Daniel exhaled. Thank you, Ethan. You always know how to fix things. I nodded, hiding the satisfaction building behind my calm expression. I do what I can. Later, back at my flat, Emily was waiting, sketches spread across the table. You handled him, she asked, voice cautious. I nodded, leaning against the wall. I did. He's walking into the trap himself. No fire, no noise. Just numbers. Emily frowned slightly. That's cold, Ethan, but effective. I smiled faintly. Cold feels necessary sometimes. She shook her head, but there was a spark of amusement in her eyes. You're terrifying. I laughed softly, the sound lighter than it had been in months. Maybe just focused. We turned our attention to Sophie Trent's studio. Emily was sketching floor plans, her lines confident, precise. Her smile returned in fragments. Small victories showing through the stress she had carried for months. You've improved, I said quietly. Noticing her posture, the way her pencil moved with renewed energy. I've had a good teacher, she said, glancing up with a teasing grin. And a patient partner? I smirked. Partner, huh? I could get used to that. We laughed softly, working side by side. The silence between conversations wasn't heavy anymore. It was productive, collaborative, comforting. I started to breathe more freely, my chest no longer tight with grief alone. Ethan, Emily said suddenly, pointing at a design element I'd suggested. This works. It really does. Sophie's clients will love it. I knew it would, I said, though it wasn't arrogance. It was control, satisfaction, at building something real, constructive. Not destruction like Daniel's project, though that felt satisfying too. She looked up at me, eyes reflecting trust and respect. I'm glad we're doing this together. Me too, I admitted. Feels normal. Good even. Emily smiled fully now, something I hadn't seen in months. It made me realize how much of myself I'd been holding back. Fear, rage, grief. Working with her, laughing, planning, creating. It was a salve I hadn't known I needed. I turned back to the plans. both Daniel's and Sophie's, and felt a strange balance settling inside me. The scales were shifting. I had regained control, not just emotionally, but strategically. Daniel was unaware, walking deeper into the consequences of his own actions. While Emily and I were building something real, tangible, creative, the day faded into evening. Sophie Trent would arrive tomorrow. Emily packed her sketches neatly, glancing at me once with that quiet acknowledgement that said more than words ever could. "I'll see you tomorrow," she said softly. Tomorrow, I agreed. Watching her leave, the flat quiet again, but no longer empty. I sat down. Reviewing the documents for Daniel, the trap was set. He would stumble forward, unknowing. Meanwhile, life, real life, was growing around me. Emily, Sophie, the work we were creating, it reminded me that I could survive this. Not just survive, but rise. And for the first time in months, I felt it calm, focus, and the faintest spark of hope. I watched from the flat as news alerts popped up on my phone. Carter's catastrophe. Daniel's company was crumbling. Every headline, every analysis, detailed his losses, mismanagement, and fraud. I didn't feel triumph, not exactly. Just quiet. A slow, steady confirmation of what I had set in motion. "Ethan," Emily said softly, glancing at me from the sofa. "You look calm." I nodded, sipping my coffee. "I am. It's over. Everything he built, it's collapsing under its own weight. I just watched the plan unfold." She frowned. "Did you feel anything else? Revenge, satisfaction?" I shook my head. "No, not satisfaction. Relief? Maybe. The storm is done. That's enough." Hours later, I saw her name flash on my phone. Claire. My thumb hesitated before answering. "Ethan," she whispered when I picked up. Her voice cracked. "Can I come over?" I didn't respond immediately. I didn't move either. The Thames glimmered faintly in the distance through the flat's window. "Why?" I finally asked, voice steady. I made a mistake," she admitted. "Everything, it was a mistake." I leaned back, arms crossed. "So did I. I trusted you." There was a long silence, filled only by the hum of the city. Then a knock at the door. I didn't rush to open it. When I did, she stood there, soaked from the rain, mascara streaked down her cheeks, eyes red and pleading. "Claire," I said quietly, stepping aside to let her in. "Sit." She sank onto the chair, hands trembling in her lap. I can't believe I let it happen." "Daniel, everything stop," I said, voice firm but calm. "Stop blaming him in front of me. I don't care anymore. He made his choices. You made yours. And I made mine. Trusting you." Her lips quivered. "Ethan, I thought I loved him. I was scared. I didn't think about you." "I didn't think you didn't," I said, softly, not accusing, just stating a fact I had to accept. And that's the point. You didn't? I did. And I can't change that. "I thought we could fix things," she said, voice breaking. "I thought maybe you could forgive me." I shook my head. Forgiveness isn't the issue. Understanding is. I understand why it happened. That doesn't mean it's acceptable. That doesn't mean I'm letting you back into my life. Her shoulders slumped, and I saw it, the collapse of everything she had relied on. Daniel's empire gone, her public image fractured, and now the private regret. "I was blind," she whispered. "I thought he was everything." And I interrupted gently. "Stop. Stop justifying. Just feel it. Feel the weight of what happened. Because I have. I carried it for months." Her hands went to her face, hiding the tears she couldn't stop. "I'm so sorry, Ethan." I took a deep breath. It's not about sorry anymore. It's about truth. You made choices. I made choices. And those choices separated us. She looked up, eyes pleading. "So you're shutting the door on me?" I nodded slowly. "I am. Not with anger. Not with rage. But with clarity. I can't go back to what was. It's gone. And so are we. Her lips trembled, and I could see every regret, every fleeting hope drained from her. "I understand," she whispered. I stood, walking to the door. "Goodbye, Claire." She rose as well, hesitant, holding herself like a fragile shell of the person I once knew. "Goodbye, Ethan," she said softly, voice catching. I closed the door gently. The sound was final, but not cruel. It felt like closing a chapter I had carried with me far too long. I leaned back against the door, letting the quiet fill the room. No triumph. No exhilaration. Just peace. The weight that had pressed on my chest for months finally eased. Daniel's downfall, Claire's regrets. The chaos had no longer had power over me. Emily came over, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" I nodded, a faint smile breaking through. "I am. More than I've been in a long time." She squeezed my shoulder gently. "You deserve this calm. You've earned it." I let the words settle. For months, I had walked through anger, grief, betrayal, sleepless nights, and doubts. And now, finally, the storm was gone. All that remained was the clarity of choices, consequences, and survival, I think, I said quietly, almost to myself. "I can finally breathe again." Emily smiled, eyes reflecting relief and understanding. "Then breathe, Ethan. Really breathe." I walked to the window, watching the Thames and the fading light. The rain had stopped. The streets glimmered with reflections of neon and dusk, quiet now, indifferent, like the world had waited for me to find peace before moving on. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Emily asked softly behind me. I turned, letting the faintest smile touch my lips. "I don't know yet. But I do know this. I survived. I moved through the storm. And now I can choose what comes next. Not in anger, not in revenge, but with clarity." She nodded, a quiet understanding passing between us. We didn't need more words. The silence was enough, and in that quiet, I realized something I hadn't felt in months. Not anger, not grief, not betrayal, only peace, and for the first time since everything fell apart, it felt real. Emily's invitation arrived one morning, printed on thick, creamy paper. "Studio launch, you're invited." I stared at it for a long moment. Months had passed since the storm of betrayal, yet a part of me hesitated. I arrived at the launch that evening, the streets of London glowing under strings of lights. The studio was buzzing, laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of new beginnings. And then I saw her. Emily stood near the center, radiant, confident. Her hair fell perfectly, her smile bright, eyes alive. I felt a strange warmth, relief washing over me. "Ethan," she said, spotting me. Her smile widened. "You came." "I wouldn't miss it," I said, stepping closer. She laughed softly. "I almost didn't invite you. I thought maybe it would be awkward." "Awkward?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Not after everything we've been through. We're survivors, remember?" She tilted her head, eyes sparkling. "Survivors, yes. I like that." As we moved through the crowd, sipping wine and observing the displays, my eyes caught something on her hand. A ring, my old wedding ring. "Emily," I murmured, astonished. She looked down, then back at me, calm and gentle. "I found it among Daniel's discarded things," she said. At first I thought of what it meant, the betrayal, the pain. But then I realized something. I waited, my heart thudding. "It reminded me that broken things can still shine," she said softly, turning the ring so the light caught it. "Just like us. We're broken, Ethan, but here we are, standing, creating, living." I blinked, trying to process the mix of emotions. Relief, nostalgia, quiet happiness. "I never expected that," I admitted, voice low. She laughed lightly, not shy, not timid. "Neither did I, but it felt right. Poetic, even." I shook my head, smiling despite myself. "Poetic, huh? I like that." The crowd moved around us, guests congratulating Emily, admiring her designs. I stayed close, watching her interact, seeing the confidence she carried now. Not the fragile woman from months ago, hiding from the storm. This Emily was alive, thriving. "You look incredible," I said finally. Gesturing at her, she laughed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thanks, it's been a long journey, Ethan. We've both survived." "You too." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I have, thanks to you, in part. Working with you, seeing your strength, it reminded me that I could stand again." She tilted her head, expression softening. "And you reminded me, too, that life doesn't end because of betrayal. That even when things fall apart, there's a way to build again." I smiled faintly. "I suppose we're proof of that." Emily's gaze lingered on the ring. "It's strange, isn't it? Something meant for a past life finding its place in a new one." "It's fitting," I said. "Not as a symbol of what we lost, but what we survived. What we built afterward," she nodded, eyes meeting mine. "Exactly. Redemption, not romance. Laughter instead of tears. That's what matters." We laughed softly together, a sound that wasn't forced. Not lovers, not friends in the shallow sense, but something deeper. Companions in survival, architects of our own renewal. "Do you think," she said, voice quiet, "that broken things will always find a way to shine?" I glanced at the ring again, warm light reflecting from the metal. "I think they can. If someone believes in them, if someone remembers to see their value." Emily smiled, and I realized she was looking at me, not the ring. "Then we've both learned something important." "Yes," I said, soft but certain. "We have." The night continued, people mingling, music playing, champagne flowing. But Emily and I lingered together, quietly watching others celebrate. Knowing our own journey had already reached a kind of peace, I raised my glass to her. Two broken things that shine. She clinked hers against mine. To survivors, the ring glinted, reflecting our laughter, our scars, our quiet triumph. It wasn't about love lost or regained. It was about understanding, closure, and a second chance at life itself. And for the first time in a long while, I felt whole again. The morning light spilled across the Thames, soft and golden, and I leaned on the balcony railing, letting it warm my face. The city below moved slowly, oblivious to the private histories that had unfolded over the months. "Ethan." Emily's voice came from inside, gentle, cautious. "Tea's ready." I nodded without turning. "Thanks," I said, still gazing at the river. "I'll be there in a minute." She stepped onto the balcony, holding two steaming mugs. "You always take the sunrise seriously," she said with a small smile. "I guess I've learned to notice it," I admitted, taking a mug from her hands. The warmth seeped into my fingers, grounding me. "After everything," Emily leaned against the railing, sipping her tea. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" I nodded, eyes on the water. "It is, and quiet." After months of chaos, I didn't realize how much I missed quiet.
How?
She glanced at me, studying my face. "And how are you feeling?" "Really?" I exhaled slowly. "Peaceful. Surprisingly. I watched Daniel leave the country, bankrupt. Claire remarried to someone who, well, she's getting a taste of her own medicine, I suppose." Emily smirked, faint but genuine. "Karma. Truth. Not your hand. That's probably better than vengeance, isn't it?" I smiled faintly. "Yes. Watching them suffer would have been hollow. But seeing truth unfold, that's enough." She nodded, taking another sip. "In your studio work? How's that going?" I shrugged lightly, a small laugh escaping. "Thriving. Sophie Trent's projects, collaborations with you, it's real. It's productive, hopeful." I didn't think I could feel hope again. Millie reached out, touching my hand briefly. "You earned it. You've built it back." I held her gaze. "We built it back. Together." A silence fell, not heavy, not awkward. Just quiet acknowledgement of months of pain, reflection, and survival. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "No, I don't want to dwell there. I've learned that some things aren't meant to be returned to. They serve as lessons, not destinations." She smiled, eyes glinting with warmth. That sounds like forgiveness. I looked down at the river, letting the sunlight reflect on the water. Yes, forgiveness. But not for them. To stop carrying the weight of anger, betrayal, and grief. Emily nodded, understanding without needing more words. That's brave. I don't feel brave, I said quietly. I feel free. Free to breathe without the past pressing down on me. Free to exist without resentment as a constant companion. She leaned back, still holding the mug. And yet, you've kept the lessons. You haven't forgotten, but you're not trapped either. That's exactly it, I said softly. Memory without pain. Awareness without obsession. That's the balance I've been seeking. She smiled faintly, glancing at the sunrise again. I think we both needed to see that light, Ethan. After the storm, it's the first calm morning we've had. I raised my mug in agreement. To calm mornings, 2 surviving storms, 2 lessons learned. Emily clinked her mug against mine. And to the river, always moving forward. I chuckled softly. Always moving forward. Like us, we sipped in silence, letting the city wake around us. The streets below reflected the golden light. Boats drifted lazily, and the Thames shimmered like liquid glass. I felt the past month's tension melt, replaced by quiet satisfaction, a sense of order restored not by revenge, but by truth and endurance. Do you ever regret trusting me back then? Emily asked suddenly, voice gentle but probing. I shook my head. No, you reminded me that trust, when given wisely, can be rebuilt. That's something I'll carry forward in work, in life, in friendship, and maybe more someday, if fate allows. She smiled, eyes soft but didn't press further. I'm glad, she said simply. I took a deep breath, the cool morning air filling my lungs. You know, I used to think peace meant silence, absence. Now I understand it's more than that. It's clarity, awareness, acceptance. Emily nodded. And you have it now. Yes, I whispered, sipping the tea, letting it warm me from inside. I do. For the first time in months, I can just breathe. And it's enough. She leaned back, looking at the river with me. We didn't speak, and we didn't need to. The sunrise reflected on the water, painting everything gold. The Thames flowed, unstoppable, indifferent, yet beautiful. And I let myself watch, fully present, fully alive, without the shadows of the past stretching over me. I whispered quietly. Almost to the river itself, forgiveness wasn't for them. It was for me. And finally, I breathed freely. Asterisk.